I don't know if you can see what I see when I read this. It looks like the spiritual energy field may be endless and that it is always available for renewal. And there is no space for drainage, but that's not true. We're going to find out as we get into this teaching how your spiritual energy field can actually be drained as well. The first slide talks about the physical energy field. And in all of these fields, we have the physical energy field, we have the mental energy field, and we have the spiritual energy field. And each of these three energy fields are different and function different. However, they do affect one another. And so the physical energy field is usually associated with the body, the physical processes. It includes the energy that sustains bodily functions, movement, and physical health. And I'm sure a lot of you experience energy drainage in your physical body just from doing everyday tasks like going to work, taking care of yourself, taking care of your family, paying bills, worrying about bills, which is probably more in the mental energy field. But you are aware of the physical energy field and how you can be drained in that area. And there are health problems that go along with this that I think we need to tap into just a little bit. But let's move on. How does the spiritual energy interact with the physical field? By influencing well-being, vitality, and sometimes even physical healing, but it's not primarily rooted in this field. And so you can use spiritual energy to help sustain you physically. But then when you think about it, as we go further down, you will understand why the spiritual energy field is necessary to keep that field clean and clear. And so the next energy field that we're talking about is the mental and emotional. That has to do with the cognitive field, the place, your brain. And this is a mixture of the physical brain and the mental brain. So everybody knows that when the physical body starts to deteriorate, or I would say in the death process, the physical body starts to shut down. What does the brain do? It absorbs all of the energy from all of the organs in your body because the brain requires a lot to sustain itself. It's an energetic field. It is a magnetic field. The brain has a lot of electrical connections, the synapses, and all of the different activity that goes on the brain. And you also have to know that your brain does not rest just because you go to sleep. It is in constant flux. It is constantly moving. And so it is constantly taking energy from places where you store energy and other organs in your body when you don't take care of your cognition, when you don't mentally rest, when you don't give your mind time to rest, it's going to drain the other organs in your body, which is going to cause physical issues. So while spiritual energy can influence and be influenced by mental and emotional state, it is not confined to this field either, which we have just learned about the physical. And so let's look at the spiritual energy field. So when we look at our spiritual energy field and we experience fatigue syndrome, spiritual energy is often considered to come from a distinct or higher field, sometimes referred to as the spiritual energy field or the universal energy field. This field is associated with the non-material aspects of existence, such as consciousness, awareness, and connection to the divine, our universal source. It transcends the physical and mental emotional fields, though it interacts with them. The spiritual energy field is thought to be the source of higher consciousness, intuition, and experiences of unity or oneness with the universe or with the collective humanity. And so I don't know if you can see what I see when I read this. It looks like the spiritual energy field may be endless and that it is always available for renewal. And there is no space for drainage, but that's not true. We're going to find out as we get into this teaching how your spiritual energy field can actually be drained as well. So let's go on. Mental fatigue. What is mental fatigue? This is one of the things that, let me tell you why I decided to do this teaching is because I experience spiritual fatigue. And I have been constantly associating it with physical fatigue, mental fatigue, but I think it was a combination of all of them because I did not know that I was entering into this place where all areas of my life were being drained. My physical strength was being drained. My mental strength was being drained. My spiritual strength was being drained. And one of the things that you have to pay attention to is who do you bring into your space? Because not only are the things you doing depleting your energy, but the people you bring into your space is also absorbing these energy fields. And so mental fatigue is overactivation of the mind. Constant engagement with spiritual or universal energy can lead to a heightened state of mental activity. This can involve deep contemplation, processing profound experiences, or maintain a continuous connection to higher consciousness without breaks or proper mental rest. This can lead to mental exhaustion. Are y'all with me? Cognitive overload. The mind may struggle to process and integrate the vast amount of information and insights that can come from constant spiritual engagement, leading to cognitive overload and fatigue. Now, I can go a lot of places with this, especially when we're talking about religious people, right? Now, we have a tendency, or I have a tendency to talk a lot about religious experiences, religious institutions, um, doctrines, rituals, and practices, things like that. And so that's because I spent over 50 years in Christianity as a minister, traveled globally, had an opportunity in that ministry position to be a guest of President Ronald Reagan when he was president of the United States. I was among 200 Black ministers. Out of those 200, 6 were women. I was one of those females. And so I have had some experiences. So I'm aware of the religious field and how that can be draining. Can you imagine, by way of example, the constant singing and shouting and praying and fasting and reading, right? Witnessing, the constant activity to keep yourself sanctified, right? And so, but we don't rest. And in my family, we are a family of musicians and singers and preachers. And so when we get together, you talking about a lot of activity. We're talking a lot of singing and music, right? And so you can drain your energy, your physical and mental energy can drain pretty fast when you are functioning from a religious, institutional religious perspective, because everything is already laid out for you what you should be doing. But when you're getting into this new place where you're talking about expanded consciousness, awareness, awakenings, taking on a more of a universal spiritual expandedness, then you are in a whole nother arena of energy drainage. And so let's continue with our slide. Physical fatigue. Physical fatigue, energy drain, engaging with spiritual practices. We just talked about that. Or maintaining a connection to the universal field often requires a significant amount of personal energy. This can deplete physical reserves, especially if the body is not sufficiently nourished or worshiped. And all of you know that in Christianity and many other religions, there is a lot of physical requirements. Um, there are a lot of rituals that go with practicing your faith. And so, but when you're getting into the area of physical fatigue, many of us don't always look at these things because in religion and Christianity, there's often a message that separates the spiritual from the physical, right? We are told that our physical bodies are sinful. We're told that we need to constantly bring them under subjection. And so there is a constant battle in religion with the physical and the spiritual. But there's also battles in religion with the mental. Remember, Paul said that he find in his body this battle all the time where it's warring with his mind. And it's just a constant thing. So we're clear on that as far as religion is concerned. But when you're talking about, again, expanded consciousness, you're talking about awakenings and awareness, and you're talking about growing as a spiritual being and your connection to universal consciousness, you're in a whole nother arena. And that arena requires another level or a different level of mental and physical expending, right? And so in what happens when we neglect our physical fatigue, the neglect of physical needs. Individuals deeply engaged in spiritual pursuits may sometimes neglect basic physical needs like sleep, proper nutrition, and exercise. Over time, this neglect can result in physical fatigue and weakened immune systems. And so, what I found happening to me is that when I am functioning in a religious atmosphere, especially with my family, and this is not anything against my family, it's just a fact. And so we there's a lot of energy. And so after a few days, I am completely exhausted. Why? Because that is not where I draw my energy from. However, whenever I am in the atmosphere, a lot of my energy is drained. And so physical fatigue, mental fatigue, these all play a part in where we're going to be going with this discussion. Emotional and psychological drain. Look at this: fatigue syndrome, emotional intensity. We don't even think about the emotional side of our energy that gets drained. We constantly may ignore these areas, but these are areas that are often latent. And we just take them for granted that they're going to function and they're going to operate when we need them to. And so, emotional intensity. Spiritual experiences can be emotionally intense, leading to feelings of vulnerability, confusion, or even overwhelm. Constant exposure to such intensity without periods of emotional rest can contribute to emotional fatigue. Are you all getting this? I hope this is clear to you. And what is the existential question to this emotional and psychological drain? Constant interaction with the spiritual field can bring up deep existential questions and challenges to your beliefs and ideas, which can be mentally and emotionally exhausting to navigate. What am I saying here in this space? You do not get to not participate in your spiritual growth, in your expanded consciousness growth. You do not get to not participate in your deconstructing process. It requires your participation mentally, physically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. Why? Because when we're talking about the emotional and psychological strain, there is a constant questioning where you are dealing with doubts. You're dealing with constant questioning. Am I doing the right thing? Am I going in the right direction? It's comfortable. You hear what I'm about to say? It's comfortable to go back into religion and just have everything handed down to you, being told what to do all the time. But in this space where we're talking about spiritual expansion, we're talking about psychological expansion, expanding consciousness, and we're talking about deconstructing, decolonizing, deconverting. This requires a lot of psychological calisthenics. The questioning alone can be traumatizing and can be energy draining, even to the point where you're like, what is it all about? What am I doing here? I'm part of some Facebook groups, and I think I think a lot of times when we're going through these these transformations, we lose our language. And so a lot of people are saying, you know what, the more I deconstruct, the more I expand my consciousness, the more that I am awakened or experiencing awareness, the more I cuss. Why? Why do we cuss in these new spaces? Because we're in spaces where the language is unfamiliar.